Greetings, people of Earth. I'm Rick Harold. Thanks for listening to my podcast and watching my videos. So, you want an IPO? That is the process that we started going through at InstallShield during the internet boom, 1999, 98. I'm going to give a little bit of background into that and talk about the issues that we had in the process. So we were growing at a pretty good clip of 50 to 100%, depending upon which year you look at during this history from 1990 up through 2000 or 2001, something like that. We were growing quite rapidly. And of course, a lot of things have been changing. Windows was just come out early 90s in terms of being something that you could really use, and exploded, of course. Lotus 123 kind of was disappearing, being replaced by Microsoft Excel and Office. So there were lots of dynamic changes going on. And of course, the internet was right in the middle of there when Netscape came out with the browser, 94, 95, in terms of initially. So we were growing really well. We had a lot of customers selling our product, making, depending on which year, anywhere up towards $30 to $40 million. But we didn't have an internet plan, and our concept of what an IPO is, other than we know what it is technically, what are we going to do with the IPO? What do we do with the money? So that was a lot of work that we started putting in to figure out, okay, what are we going to get out of this? And what are the processes for getting there? So part of the process in our minds for getting there is you have to hire senior management that's experienced, that you have to find venture funding. So up to this point in time, we had no venture funding. It was all self-funded. We bootstrapped everything. I talk about that in another video, I think. So, which venture funding you want to get, etc. So lots of questions were out there in terms of who, based on your stage of growth and all that. So we started the process. We had some venture funding come in. They put people on the board. We would then have board meetings and procedures and processes, all of which is meant to make us more prepared for a public company. We brought in a CFO and other people like that to make a more robust situation for our company. We also had to come up with an internet strategy. So our products are installation and updating and things related to machine configuration. So we had strategies, but from an internet point of view, what was it? So believe me, we worked on many permutations of things. We came up with this concept called Digital Wizard, where you'd have this digital vault where all the software was. You could download software on demand, and it'd be paid for, and you'd be licensing it and updating it and all this stuff. And I'm not going to get into that here. It's just we came up with a strategy. Now, the strategy was forced in a sense that we had to come up with a strategy because everybody was coming up with internet solutions. Billions of dollars were being thrown around at companies that had no sales, that really had no customers, just had an idea. They were all going to put out all the brick and mortar stores were going to go down the flusher because these new internet ones are coming out. A lot of it seemed legitimate. Some of it didn't. Some of the stuff we saw was crazy. We even had one of these companies approach us, and their sales were like 100,000, 200,000. Again, ours was like 30, 40 million. I don't remember the exact year. And they wanted to buy us because they had $1 billion valuation in their company. And of course, we'd get stock, but they didn't have anything. They had something in terms of licensing, kind of encryption technology, but it was so weak. And then it was great we didn't because it ended up being a big dump. But there were so many weak things out there, and which all came crashing down eventually, but that you got caught up in the process. So that's what Digital Wizard was. And of course, we're trying to be legitimate about it. We've always been building a real company with real products, creating a management team around this process, the process to get to the IPO, having consistent, revenue and accounting procedures in place and recognizing revenue and all that stuff, all the technology that you need to have. So we got caught up in the Digital Wizard, the internet part. We got caught up with top-heavy management so that we were spending a lot of money, which if you're going to go public is okay because you'll eventually get the money back. We still didn't really have a strategy where the money from the public offering would go. Not that we didn't have it written down, and we had, I'm sure, things we said we would be doing with it. But we got caught up in a process which ended up being too top heavy and bureaucratic and started impacting our products because we weren't focusing on the products as much. And in software and any kind of technology, you got to be focusing on the products and the customer, really, because that's who's buying them. So then we started having slower growth. That's then a bunch of stuff into wrinkles in terms of what does that mean when we go public, because you have to report all that stuff. In the end, it didn't matter. Why? Because the internet blew up. The internet bubble, which I'm not going to describe, everybody knows about it, completely collapsed. Internet companies went down the flusher. Many of them didn't. Amazon's one that didn't. Other ones, most went down the flusher because they were garbage, but many didn't that were good, and they're still consistent. They may not be here today, but they were consistent, and they had a real product or real strategy or a real use for a customer, because that's, in the end, that's what really matters. So that caused us problems because our IPO was dead. There's no way now with the internet bust, and I know we spent time trying to figure it out, but there's no way we're going to get any real money in this internet trying to go public, even though we had real products, because we also had slower sales now, which made it even more frightening to anybody who would want to help go public. We also had to then start cutting senior management and other staff because we had been profitable our whole existence. We self-booted and all that. So now we had to cut staff, cut people. It was a very difficult process. You get to know everybody. It's very personal in a startup company. It's like a family, and it's hard. Obviously, the outside world's dictating to you what's going on to a certain extent, and you get involved in it. But we had to right the ship. It's hard to move a big ship of 300 people and get that fixed and working again. So, of course, we did. We were successful doing it. It was difficult. IPO never happened. And it's kind of funny because the recent ICO, initial cryptocurrency offerings of last year and a half, were so reminiscent of 1999-ish, except it was compacted, this cryptocurrency stuff, in like a 50 times faster process. And the number of people creating currencies, oh my gosh, there was thousands of these things. It's so funny. And when you look at them, there's some legitimate ones in there. And I'll do a whole thing on cryptocurrency. I think it's a legitimate thing. The technology in the blockchain's totally legitimate, and there's total uses for this stuff. But like with the internet boom, the ICOs, or the token offering was the next one they did to make it look different, so they could get away with getting funding for it. And then they had like pre-ICO funding. So people are always cleverly looking for ways of funding. Of course, we're going to be doing crowdfunding, so what's that? That's different, although that's pre-purchase of products, really, right? And you guys putting your trust in me. So it was very interesting what happened. The IPO process taught us a lot. Eventually, we were bought by a public company, and then I worked in the executive team of a public company and had to go through the process a public company has to do when you're doing earnings and predictions and what you can say and what you can't say, and that was very interesting. But don't get me wrong, I love the IPO. It's a great mechanism. It needs to be there. The ICO needs to be there. Those are all legitimate. But like with anything, you got to have meat behind it. There's always a certain amount of faith in terms of whether or not this company's going to be able to do what they're saying. The crowdfunding thing will be the same. Can they do what they're saying? Do you believe in where they're going with this? There's always a leap of faith with this stuff. So that's a little bit of the story of the IPO. Thanks for listening, and take it easy.